Today, I would like to present a Dhamma teaching that focuses on the core of Buddhism. The topic is about guiding our minds to awaken from the power of ignorance, avidya, and helping our minds recognize their true nature. This process is often described as self-reliance, where one learns that oneself is one's own refuge. At present, the minds of all beings, including our own, rely on mental formations. When the mind depends on these mental formations, they fabricate and attach themselves to the body. This connection is described as namadhatu, the mental element, relying on rupadhatu, the physical element. Once the mind becomes dependent on the physical element, it falls into delusion, clinging to this physical form as if it were the self. It begins to believe, I am human, I am this body, I am male or female, or I have a name and a surname. This clinging to the body in physical form leads the mind to further seek external physical elements. This process is called sending the mind outward. The first stage of this occurs when the mind depends on citta sankhara. From there, the mind has never truly recognized itself. It does not realize that its own nature is the pure essence of Dharma. Instead, it relies on conditioned elements, the mental fabrications, to construct, learn, and comprehend the true essence of its own Dharma nature. After relying on the first level, we then rely on the second level of form elements, and then rely on external material elements as the third level. When we are deluded into believing and clinging to the idea that we are humans, that we are this body, we then cling to the notion that our parents, relatives, siblings, children and grandchildren belong to us. We cling to the belief that these clothes belong to us, this house belongs to us, medicines, food belong to us, land and money belong to us, cars belong to us. Then we struggle and seek various external things, hoping to make everything belong to us completely. We desire wealth, status, rank, and power so that we can cling to the idea that everything belongs to us. We want to claim that this world belongs to us, this universe belongs to us. We want to possess everything as me and mine. We want to be the center of everything. This is the nature of self-identity. This is ignorance. Because our minds lack the knowledge of true wisdom, this is the very starting point of samsara, the cycle of birth and death that the Buddha pointed out and tirelessly taught us. The Buddha taught us to turn against the stream, to awaken and reflect inwardly, to see our original nature. He urged us to cease seeking external things, to stop relying on what is outside of ourselves. The Buddha taught us to awaken, to realize the truth, and to understand the meaning of one is their own refuge. He guided us to turn against the stream and awaken to see this mental element, namadhatu, to observe thoughts, mental images, emotions, perceptions, and recognize that these phenomena are not self. They are not the mind itself, but merely processes and tools that the mind has been deludedly relying on for countless aeons. The Buddha pointed out that these mental fabrications are the very essence of samsara, the endless cycle of conceptual thinking and mental conditioning revolving continuously in the loop of delusion. Observe closely. From the moment we wake up until we fall asleep, even right now, as I open my mouth to speak, this is citta sankhara, the mental formations, the fabrications of thought. We rely on this inner voice constantly speaking from waking to sleeping, playing endlessly with these fabrications, drowning in them, suffering because of them, crying and lamenting over them. We chase after these fabrications, striving to make them align with what we desire in our thoughts. This is the ignorance of the mind, the lack of true understanding. How lamentable and pitiable it is for sentient beings to be trapped in this cycle. Dharma is actually simple, but no one explains or teaches it in a simple way. Instead, they teach it as something difficult, saying that enlightenment and nirvana are hard to achieve, impossible without sufficient parami, spiritual perfection. Parami means fullness. When something is full, when our mindfulness is full, When we have full mindfulness, we understand that enlightenment and nirvana are within our own mind. When our mind awakens to see mental formations, not foolishly clinging to these mental formations, not foolishly clinging to the sounds being spoken right now, where is the self? Not foolishly clinging to the sensations being experienced right now, where is the self? Not foolishly clinging to this understanding either, then we will no longer have anything that conditions us. We will know the pure element of truth, empty, clear, pure, liberated beyond conventions. We have this element of truth, but we don't recognize it. We have mind, but don't know the mind. The mind, clouded by ignorance, creates mental formations, then dwells in these mental formations, sinks into them, clings to them, and suffers with them. It relies on mental formations to construct the notion that the self is this physical form, assigns value that the self suffers, that the self is happy, that the self is speaking, that the self is hearing, eating, tasting, touching, that the self is thinking, assigns value that there really is a self in this physical form, assigns value that we really are these mental elements. This is avidya, ignorance. Realizing the Dharma is simple, not difficult. It is merely about awakening the mind to see the truth. This is called seeing the Dharma within the Dharma. For example, recognize that the voice speaking right now is not you, and the sound itself is not truly a sound. It is anatta without self, without any real essence. It is merely a ripple on the surface of the mind, an activity of mental formations, not the mind itself. The Buddha taught that whatever we cling to, we suffer because of it. Whatever we possess, we suffer because of that possession. He realized that the five aggregates, the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, are not self and not ours. The body is not you. Feelings of pleasure, pain, or neutrality are not you. Perceptions and thoughts are not you. Even the awareness of these processes is not you. These things arise and function by themselves without belonging to anyone. The key is to see this truth, that nothing is me or mine. This is the essence of the teaching. When we awaken to see this truth, awakening internally, because this truth manifests before our eyes and heart at every moment of consciousness, it is timeless, akaliko. We just need to awaken to see this truth. When we see it, tears will flow. We will understand the truth about what we've been deluding ourselves with, foolishly clinging to everything as self. No wonder we suffer. No wonder we keep cycling in the endless whirlpool of conditioned thoughts. When we see that this sound is not us, this mental image is not us, this sensation is not us, whenever we see this, there will be a loss of what we used to cling to as self. Even though we never really lost anything, we never really gained anything in the first place, but we deluded ourselves into thinking there was gaining and losing. When we were born, speaking in concrete terms first, about physical form, roughly speaking, but apply this metaphor inwardly carefully, this body when we were newly born had nothing at all. We were born naked without a single thing, yet we foolishly cling to clothes as being ours. How can they be ours? Think about it. We believe that houses, cars, possessions, everything is ours. But how can they be ours? We were born with nothing but our naked form, yet we claim that everything is ours. This world, this earth, this universe, we claim it all as us and ours. How can any of it be ours? When we were born, we came alone with nothing at all. This is the basic truth to understand before going deeper. Now turn inward toward the mind. Before we were born into this physical body, before we obtained this body, or sometimes an animal body, or human body as the case may be, before getting any physical form, we were pure consciousness. This body is not us, but when we came to inhabit it, we mistakenly clung to it as our body. What do you think? Isn't this foolish? If we were to separate the mind from our body right now, the body would simply collapse and decay, wouldn't it? Now let's focus on understanding this. The mind, or consciousness, is what we truly are. We often call this consciousness the soul. The body itself is insignificant because we are not the body. We are the soul. Looking deeper, before becoming the soul, we were the essence of mind, the Dhamma element, a pure, empty, and luminous essence. It is the state of pure emptiness, a clarity devoid of anything. Can you feel this emptiness and purity within yourself? It's like when you first awaken. In that moment of pure awareness before thoughts arise, we know we're alive. But there's no language, only a feeling without anyone feeling it. That is what life is at its core. Reflect further. At the beginning, we were pure emptiness, clear, luminous, and full of infinite potential. This emptiness is like the essence of the entire cosmos, containing infinite knowledge, like a library of the universe within. All universal truths already exist within our minds. Once we realize that before becoming the soul, we were pure emptiness, we begin to see through our delusions. The sounds we hear are not us, for they are merely mental formations. Mental images, emotions, and sensory perceptions are not us. Ultimately, what we once believed to be the soul, our sense of self, is also not truly us. What remains is pure, luminous emptiness that merges with all. Can you see it? This is the true beginning. The practice of Dhamma is about reversing the flow and returning to our origin to discover what we truly are. We use mental formations as tools to recognize this primordial essence, our original nature. In another perspective, our mind is inherently an element of pure radiant emptiness, already the element of nirvana, nibbana dhatu. Our mind is naturally luminous and pure. However, this Dhamma element, Dhamma dhatu, being empty and pristine, cannot understand itself because it is free from any conditioning or fabrication. Do we understand this? It is an unconditioned Dhamma element, devoid of any fabrication. To interact and engage with experiences, this Dhamma element creates fabrications and tools, such as thoughts, imaginations, emotions, and sensory awareness. It generates the consciousness, or soul, which can also be referred to as the subtle body. The mind creates this mental element as an instrument for conditioning. Our role is simply to guide the mind to awaken and realize this truth, so we no longer foolishly depend on or cling to these tools. When the mind fully awakens and ceases to rely on fabrications, it naturally returns to its original state of pure, unconditioned radiance. Dhamma is simply this, it's not difficult or complicated. It's about listening and understanding, about awakening and aligning ourselves with the flow of truth, as I've been explaining all along. All focused on the mind, ignorance, and pointing out the non-self nature, anatta, of mental and physical elements, nama dhatu and rupa dhatu. The goal is to guide the mind to reverse its flow and recognize its true nature, leading to the realization that self-reliance is the ultimate refuge. Dhamma is just this. It doesn't require the kind of effort or activities that the world teaches. Dhamma already exists within the mind. It's simply about the mind awakening to see the fabricated nature of its own processes. For instance, the sound you're hearing now. This voice is a mental fabrication. Can you see this? The sound is not you. Imagine, for example, a dolphin at a zoo. A large dolphin is trained to jump and perform tricks, leaping through hoops, splashing water. It's delightful to watch. Why does it jump? Because it wants the fish we throw as a reward. Can you see this image in your mind? This mental image of a dolphin isn't real. It's a fabrication arising within the mind, causing the mind to perceive it. Similarly, the mind perceives this sound, these emotions, and these mental images. When we think about something and it turns out as we imagined, we feel happy or satisfied. When things don't go as we thought, we feel unhappy or dissatisfied. Happiness, suffering, or even neutrality. These are all just vibrations, fabrications of the mind, and movements of consciousness. These phenomena arise for the mind to know them, but they're fundamentally empty of self or ownership. They're always appearing and dissolving right here and now. Right now, the sound you hear, the mental image in your mind, the emotions arising, none of these truly exist as a self or belong to anyone. They are merely phenomena arising and passing away in this moment. Both the objects perceived and the perception itself are transient and ownerless. This is the truth. This is Dhamma. The Buddha pointed us toward this realization of the non-self nature of all conditioned phenomena. This is seeing Dhamma within Dhamma, recognizing the absence of self in everything that arises and dissolves, and understanding that it's all happening continuously right before our eyes and within our hearts. When the mind sees mental fabrications and recognizes their non-self nature repeatedly over and over, it gradually develops an understanding. This understanding becomes deeply ingrained in the mind until the mind finally accepts it. At that moment, it breaks free from citta sankhara. It feels as if you are being pulled away from the illusion of being a person. For example, right now, the voice that is speaking, we think that we are the ones speaking, but suddenly there is a realization that this voice is not me. Instead, there is an awareness, a pure and luminous nature that observes this occurrence. It perceives the sound and realizes that this sound is not the mind. It sees that the mental image being formed is not the mind. Emotions too are not the mind. When we examine the act of perception itself, even that is not the mind. These are merely tools the mind uses. For a long time, the mind has relied on these tools, becoming deluded and attached to them. This has carried us along through countless cycles of existence. When we are drawn to pleasant emotions, we are led to fortunate realms, sugati. When we cling to suffering and unpleasant emotions, we are led to unfortunate realms, dugati. These mental images and emotions create forms that shape our reality. Whatever we imagine, whatever we favor, becomes the form that arises. For example, if someone is often angry, irritable, or quick-tempered, they repeatedly create a form of fiery torment, yet they remain unaware, not realizing that they are the ones fabricating this suffering. They fail to awaken to the truth, to the Dhamma, which is ever present. This unawareness blinds them to the fact that they are actively shaping their own suffering. The Dhamma is here all the time, continuously showing itself. It reveals that all these phenomena, sounds, images, emotions, and perceptions are not self, not owned by anyone, and not permanent. Yet, because we fail to awaken, we don't see it. This is why we remain caught in the cycle of samsara. In truth, these phenomena arise and pass away in the present moment. The sound you hear now, the mental image you are forming, and the emotions you feel, all of these appear and dissolve continuously. None of them belong to anyone. None of them are the self. This is the truth that the Buddha pointed to, the nature of anatta. Now, let me use an analogy to help you understand the nature of the mind. I teach only about the mind because I want you to truly understand it, understand deeply and clearly until your mind accepts this truth. When that happens, the Buddha nature will arise. You will realize it on your own. Tears will flow, and you will be profoundly moved by this knowledge. In that instant, you will release your attachment to the delusion of self. The Buddha spoke clearly about this. He said that the 5 aggregates are non-self. This means that this body is certainly not us. Thoughts, mental images, emotions, and sensory perceptions are also not us. Start by understanding this. Truly grasp it. The Buddha also taught that the mind wanders in the cycle of samsara because of ignorance. Avijja pachaya sankhara, Because of ignorance, the mind creates fabrications. Not knowing the truth, the mind relies on these fabrications and continues to generate them. This is the essence of the Buddha's teaching. The reason this mind continues to wander in samsara is because it identifies with the bodies it inhabits. When the mind resides in the body of an animal, it believes it is that animal. For example, if our mind were to dwell in the body of a shrimp, we would believe that we are a shrimp. If the mind were to inhabit the body of a land creature, like a spider, we would believe we are a spider. When the body disintegrates, the mind moves to inhabit another body. If it becomes a hyena, we believe we are a hyena. When the hyena's body disintegrates, and the mind moves on to inhabit the body of a bird, we believe we are that bird. And when the bird's body disintegrates and the mind takes form as a mosquito, we believe we are a mosquito. If by chance the mosquito's body dies and the mind takes form as a human, we then become deluded into thinking we are a man or a woman, complete with a name and surname. So, what exactly are we? We keep clinging to whatever form we take, believing ourselves to be that form. When we are dogs, we bark and howl, believing that the barking and howling is truly our voice. When the dog's body dies and we are born as a frog, we croak, believing that croaking is truly our voice. So, whether it is the howling of the dog, the croaking of the frog, or the speaking voice we are using now, whose voice is it really? Should we claim the howling voice as ours, or the croaking voice, or this speaking voice? We keep clinging, don't we? Do you understand this? An analogy to help us understand the nature of the mind. Initially, the mind is pure, empty, and clear, like the transparent emptiness of space. Air naturally resides in this emptiness, just as namadhatu, mental elements, arises within the mind's emptiness. When air begins to move, it forms winds and storms. These are just phenomena occurring within the emptiness. Imagine we are this clear emptiness. Air represents namadhatu, which arises naturally. Over time, movements like wind, storms, hurricanes, and lightning develop. These are merely conditions of the air, but we deludedly identify with them, believing, I am this storm, or I am this tornado. The pure emptiness forgets its true nature and clings to these temporary phenomena, believing it is what it hosts. Do you think this pure emptiness is foolish? Whatever it relies on, it deludes itself into believing it is that thing. This clear emptiness is our mind, our true nature. We are this Dhamma element, Dhammadhatu. Yet in the beginning, it is rooted in ignorance. No matter how skilled we are in meditation, walking meditation, reciting scriptures, or practicing precepts, it is all still avidya. Even building temples or creating material objects is driven by avidya. Our mind, in its pure, clear, and empty state, is unrelated to the body, clothing, or worldly constructions. It is not connected to our practices or rituals. Now imagine this clear emptiness flows and resides in air, believing it is air. That's the first step. When the air moves and becomes a storm, it believes it is the storm. This is the second step. This is the nature of the ignorant mind. It must learn and grow from ignorance to wisdom. Our mind creates mental fabrications as tools for conditioning and learning. It generates the sounds we hear, the mental images we imagine, the emotions we feel, and the perceptions we experience, all for the purpose of engaging with and understanding the world. Yet, in today's world, we are taught only to focus on external things, learning and conditioning ourselves outwardly. Rarely does anyone teach us to turn inward and understand the true nature of the mind itself. If someone were to teach that we are not human, not our thoughts, not the voice we hear as ours, that mental images and emotions, whether joy or suffering, are not ours, and that nothing here truly belongs to us, it would be transformative. Many would come to realize the Dhamma with ease. Liberation is not as difficult as it is often made to seem. It is in truth simple and accessible. The world of fabrications is something we create ourselves. The body is called the Rupa Dhatu, physical element, while thoughts, emotions, and perceptions are the Nama Dhatu, mental elements. Both the physical and mental elements arise from the primordial essence. We create both the physical and mental elements entirely on our own, and then we suffer because of what we ourselves have created. Avijja Pachaya Sankhara. The mind, filled with ignorance, creates fabrications and becomes entangled in them. This is the nature of beings in the world. That's why we are fortunate to be born as humans and to encounter the Buddha's teachings. Even more so, we are lucky to have teachers who guide us and point us toward understanding the mind. To hear Dhamma teachings like this is truly a rare opportunity. This Dhamma is called Dhammanupassana Satipatthana, contemplating Dhamma, to see the truth of anatta, non-self. It reveals the absence of self in all conditioned phenomena. When we experience anger, we should recognize that the anger is not us. When we feel joy or happiness, we should understand that these emotions are not us either. It's like the weather. When it's pleasant and refreshing, no one owns it. Later, when it becomes unbearably hot, still no one owns the heat. Similarly, emotions like anger or joy have no owner. So why cling to them as me or mine? Isn't it foolish to do so? Let's talk about foolishness through a metaphor. Imagine a foolish mind that clings to forms and reacts to everything. When the midday sun is blazing hot, this mind suffers and gets angry at the sun, blaming it for being too hot. Isn't it foolish? The sun doesn't care, yet the mind makes itself suffer. Later, when the wind blows strongly, breaking branches and scattering leaves, the foolish mind blames the wind. It yells, "Why is the wind so strong? It's ruining everything." But does the wind feel hurt by the blame? Of course not. The mind only makes itself suffer more. The same happens with emotions. When anger or frustration arises, the foolish mind despises these emotions, blaming them and trying to push them away. It says, "Why are you here? When will you stop?" Yet, in its attempts to reject the emotions, it suffers even more, just like it suffers when blaming the wind or the sun. Then, in the evening, heavy rain starts to fall. The foolish mind blames the rain, saying, "You're ruining everything. Everything is soaked because of you." It cries and yells at the rain, but the rain, like the wind and the sun, doesn't care. The mind is the only one that suffers from its own anger and frustration. Isn't this foolish? The mind makes itself suffer by blaming things beyond its control. If we understand this, we can learn to stop clinging and see the truth. Wisdom arises when we realize that suffering doesn't come from external conditions, it comes from within. Now there's another type of mind, a normal mind. This mind also experiences storms, rain, and challenges, but it doesn't react foolishly. When strong winds blow, the normal mind simply acknowledges, "The wind is strong today, but that's just how the wind is. No one can control it." Instead of blaming the wind, this mind focuses on preparing and repairing, strengthening the roof, securing the house, and putting things in order. It doesn't get upset at nature. When heavy rain comes, the normal mind sees it as natural. It goes inside, protects the home, and adapts. It places sandbags to redirect water, uses pumps to remove water that enters, and prepares for the situation without complaint. It understands that nature does what it does, and the best approach is to work with it. After the rain stops, the normal mind tidies up, sets things back in place, and continues life. When the weather is good, it enjoys the day planting vegetables, fishing, exchanging food, and living simply. Whether the weather is pleasant or harsh, the normal mind takes it as it comes, living peacefully and harmoniously with nature. This is the way of a balanced normal mind. However, the foolish mind reacts differently. When the house floods and the roof collapses, it cries and wails uncontrollably, blaming everything on nature. It becomes enraged, smashing things, tearing down the house and declaring, "No need for a house anymore." Its anger consumes it and it destroys everything in its path. Another foolish mind deals with its suffering by turning inward destructively. Overwhelmed by stress and misery, it seeks relief in harmful ways, drinking, indulging in excess, spending recklessly, and doing anything to vent its frustration. These two foolish minds know only how to destroy. They blame everything and everyone around them for their suffering, never realizing that the source of their misery lies within themselves. When we see this illustration, how do we feel? The nature of thought naturally thinks, sometimes in wholesome ways, sometimes unwholesome ways. This is simply its nature. When we think, mental images appear accordingly as wholesome or unwholesome. This is just its natural way. The ignorant mind suffers terribly with unwholesome states and becomes elated with wholesome ones, craving more and more. But the ordinary balanced mind sees wholesome thoughts and mental images simply as they are, living life and knowing these states as they naturally occur. When unwholesome thoughts and mental images arise, this ordinary mind sees them just as they are too. It observes how states appear sometimes as wholesome, sometimes as unwholesome, changing back and forth like heads and tails of a coin. This ordinary mind sees these phenomena and understands deeply that nothing is under our control. Nothing is truly us. Similarly with emotions, the ignorant mind gets excited with happiness, wanting more and more pleasure. When happiness doesn't arise and suffering comes, it becomes angry and destructive. This is the ignorant mind. When happy, it craves more happiness. When suffering, it tries to destroy everything to end the suffering. It doesn't see the true nature of things. This ignorant mind drowns in conditioned phenomena. Hopefully we're not like that, the ignorant mind. The ordinary mind sees emotions too. When happiness arises, it sees happiness simply being there for a period. When suffering arises due to causes and conditions that must produce these two types of emotions, like heads and tails, positive and negative, the ordinary mind sees these natural phenomena. These phenomena just are what they are. When anger comes, let it be. When contentment comes, let it be. When joy comes, let it be. When sadness comes, let it be. Whatever state arises, the ordinary mind knows it according to reality and sees these truths. These natural phenomena cannot be controlled and are not us. And then the ordinary mind experiences a feeling of lightness, spaciousness, strangeness, ease, an extraordinary lightness. When it rains, there's this unusual lightness and spaciousness. When the sun shines, there's this unusual lightness and spaciousness. In the morning, when the weather is good, there's this unusual lightness and spaciousness. Why am I feeling so light and spacious lately? Something feels different, strange. Then suddenly the ordinary mind sees, wait, this awareness hearing sounds now, is it aware by itself? It's hearing sounds by itself. Then, boom, the ordinary mind breaks free from mental formations. The ordinary mind sees that this state of knowing, thinking, conceiving, all these states are just phenomena, not us at all. Tears flow. The ordinary mind becomes radiant, realizes the truth of Dharma, freed from the cycle of mental formations, fully understanding all phenomena. The ordinary mind is permanently freed from suffering. The ordinary mind can only bow to the Buddha and say, I now understand. I am completely free from doubts. This is what Dharma is. Nothing is truly us. Through tears speaking to the Father, from now until my last breath, I will carry on your work, the work of all Buddhas. I will help liberate all beings, all consciousness from samsara. I will not let any consciousness continue wandering in this cycle. I understand now. All my doubts have ended. If no one else will do it, I will do it myself. Nothing is impossible. I will be beautiful as you are beautiful. May this truth be realized immediately. Sadhu. This is how the ordinary mind declares to the Buddha after liberation, but the ignorant mind suffers greatly, playing with thoughts day and night without knowing, playing with mental images, with happy and sad emotions, with neutral feelings, with perceptions, clinging to these states, drowning in them, crying over them, blaming everything but never knowing its own nature. This is the ignorant mind, carrying knowledge, scriptures, physical elements, building external things throughout the world, using the body to struggle for freedom from suffering, while liberation is right here with us. Just need wisdom to grasp the fundamental nature of mind, to know just this. The mind will realize truth by itself if it awakens within. This is just a story I'm telling you, hoping someone might realize truth from this recording. This is what Dharma is. It's about the ignorant mind versus the ordinary mind. The ordinary mind just knows reality as it is and accepts the true nature of mental formations. When mind sees mental formations as natural phenomena, not self, not ours, then mind becomes free from delusion about mental formations. Remember, everyone, whether young, old, disabled, woman, man, can realize truth 100%. Listen to my Dharma recordings frequently. If you're slower to understand, it might take several months because I only talk about non-self, about Dhammanupassana Satipatthana. When we awaken, we will see the thoughts constantly speaking in our minds, thoughts we rely on all the time. Truly see them for what they are. Try to see it clearly. When you can truly see it, tears will flow with spiritual rapture. The moment you do, all doubts will vanish. Dharma is simple, nothing difficult. As it's time to conclude, I'll end here. May all of us, those who have made the resolute determination not to be reborn, those who have nirvana as their goal, those who take non-self as their refuge, may we all realize the Dharma and attain enlightenment swiftly and immediately. May this be so for everyone. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. From this moment on, I shall diligently listen to this Dharma and remain aware within. I will perceive thoughts, emotions, and awareness as natural phenomena, not as self or mine. I will refrain from clinging to any phenomena. I will be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. This lifetime will be my final birth. When I have realized the Dharma, I will guide my children, grandchildren, and acquaintances to cultivate mindfulness within themselves, remaining free from attachment to thoughts and emotions. I will carry out this practice until the end of my life as an offering to the Buddha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
ขอพระพุทธเจ้าทุกพระองค์เป็นพยาน นับแต่วินาทีนี้เป็นต้นไป ข้าพเจ้าจะหมั่นฟังธรรมะนี้ ตื่นรู้อยู่ภายใน จะเห็นความคิดนึกอารมณ์และอาการรู้ เป็นธรรมชาติ ไม่ใช่เราไม่ใช่ของเรา จะไม่ยึดมั่นถือมั่นในอาการใดๆ จะไม่เกิดอีก ชาตินี้จะเป็นชาติสุดท้าย เมื่อรู้แจ้งธรรมแล้ว จะบอกสอนลูกหลานคนรู้จัก ให้ตื่นรู้อยู่ภายใน ไม่หลงยึดความคิดนึกอารมณ์ตราบจนสิ้นลม เป็นพุทธบูชา และข้าพเจ้าจะช่วยพระพุทธเจ้าทุกพระองค์ พระอาจารย์และพี่น้องในกลุ่มปัญญาวิมุตติ หรือสัตว์ขนสัตว์ให้หมด ไม่ให้เหลือแม้แต่ดวงจิตดวงเดียว ไม่มีคำว่าทำไม่ได้ สัจจานี้จะไม่มีวันเปลี่ยน แม้กายนี้จะแตกสลาย สาธุ สาธุ สาธุ